Okay, well, I think we can. Oh, we are now live streaming.
We're now live streaming.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Planning, Highways and Transport Committee meeting for the 21st of January, first meeting of the year. Do we have any apologies?
No. No apologies, Martin.
No, I think everybody's here, I think. Okay. Any declarations of interest on the items on the agenda?
Yes, possibly just Windy Edge for me.
Yes, right. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. And I have one, which is the application at what place is called now? Lone End, Argyle Terrace. I think we've looked at that one before. You have looked at that one before. So I've got to give my declaration for that one. Okay. Now then. We've got this evening, we've got David English with us from NCC planning team. We've asked him along because the ongoing matter with regard to, we've been discussing with regard to a neighbourhood plan review. You know, we had some work done on this, preliminary work done on this by Peter Biggers to see where we might be going with it. The neighbourhood development team sent out a newsletter, I guess you would call it, earlier this year. I don't know whether that's been circulated to councillors, has it, Peter?
Sorry, Martin?
Has it been circulated, the newsletter that the team sent out?
I don't recall. If it hasn't, I can send it around.
Okay.
But I think we'll probably go into more detail, much more detail tonight than was on the newsletter. But yeah, I'll send it around.
So the question for us that we have talked about, but then kind of deferred decision on is to when and how we want to look at reviewing our neighbourhood plan. So David's come along tonight to give us a bit more detail on what NCC's thinking is on where we should be aiming. I mean, our original thoughts were to look when the new local plan was brought into being, to follow on after that point, and probably you can update us with how the timetable for that is going. But it'd be interesting to hear, David, what your thoughts are on where we are in Anakin and where we ought to be looking.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Martin. Right, we did, as you say, we sent round a newsletter. We've got a sort of quarterly, fairly brief newsletter that we send out to the parishes. At the minute, it arrives through NALC, I think, but we try to get a few bits and pieces of information out there. And one of the items in the winter newsletter was about reviewing neighbourhood plans. It's not something that there's been a great deal of experience nationally on, as far as I'm aware. There's only a handful of plans that have been reviewed so far. And I think that really comes down to the need for there to be a trigger, an appropriate trigger for reviewing neighbourhood plans. There's no absolute requirement to review neighbourhood plans, but obviously, like all policy documents, they age gradually and things change. And I think you're right to point out the position regarding the Northumberland local plan, or progress with the local plan, has been probably the key trigger for change in neighbourhood plans across Northumberland. So we have had some interest from one or two other parishes that are looking to review their plans. So I think probably the sensible thing to do would be to look at what happens with the Northumberland local plan. And the position at the moment is that we think we've finished the examination of that plan. However, that depends very much on what happens with proposed modifications. So we had hearing sessions last year and the year before, in fact. It finished around the end of November, I think, early December. And we have sent a set of draft modifications to the inspector for her to consider. And in the meantime, she's written back to the county council asking for some further investigation on some matters in and around Ponteland. It's to do with employment land and the green belt. So we're currently looking to do a little bit more work, hoping to get that to the inspector in the next few weeks. After that, there'll then be a period when she'll consider whether modifications can be made to the draft local plan to make it sound, effectively to pass examination. If she finds that to be the case, which we're hopeful that will be her conclusion, we would then have to consult on modifications to the plan, and that would be for a period of at least 8 weeks. I would say that's probably not going to happen until, I would say probably after February this year at the earliest. That's been quite optimistic. So there is a period of time to go with the local plan yet, and then that will ultimately need to be adopted. So you can imagine it's probably not going to happen before late spring, early summer. But I'm under strict instructions not to give you any dates, so I won't give you any dates. It's just in the generality, as the government would speak, possibly spring, possibly summer. And again, that to some extent may be tied up with forthcoming elections. And at the moment, we don't know whether elections are going to be held. The government hasn't modified further its advice on that matter. So as things stand, there's still an election date set for the beginning of May. I think it might be the 6th of May. So we need to work out what might happen then and what might happen thereafter. So that's kind of where we're up to with the local plan. In terms of other reasons for modifying a neighbourhood plan, if for argument's sake progress isn't made with the local plan, there'll still be things that you may want to look at in your neighbourhood plan in regard to other changes, external matters, things like modification to legislation. The government's recently changed the use classes order, which affect particularly shops and business uses, which are all largely rolled into one new use class. Now that has some implications in terms of how policies work within town centres and on business parks or employment areas, because there are a lot of planning policies, and for a long time have looked to limit or to direct retail development to specified areas within towns. That may become more difficult to do with changes to the use classes order, in that buildings that are shops now could change to other uses, other business uses, without the need for planning permission. So it becomes more difficult to try and do what planners have done in the past, what councils have done in the past, which is to try to keep town centres very much retail focused. And this is all tied up with the government's wider agenda, which is to look at greater flexibilities for communities, for businesses, for individuals, in terms of the way that town centres in particular are used. So that sort of thing may lead you to want to look again at the way that the policies might work in the neighbourhood plan. And that'll affect not just Alnwick, it'll probably affect places like Morpeth as well, which they've got similar policies regarding town centre uses. So that's the sort of thing that you ought to be, I suppose, looking at now, given that the neighbourhood plan has been in place for probably 3 years or so. I think it's 2017. So that, there are policies in there that might benefit from a bit of a refresh. Now, when it comes to reviewing your plan, there are basically 3 categories of review. One, which I suspect is probably not going to get taken up, is a minor change, which is literally changes that we could make as a local planning authority for spelling mistakes, grammar, and that sort of thing. Very, very small scale changes. And that would be a simple matter of just changing the plan and then publishing a new version. There's then a level of change which is referred to as a material change. So that would be a change where you kind of modify existing policies a little bit. And if you do that, you then have to go through an independent examination. And part of that independent examination will be a consideration by an independent person about whether the changes are so substantial that they lead the plan towards a further referendum. So that's kind of in the hands of an examiner in those circumstances. And then the third category is a sort of top level, which is effectively substantial changes, which would include the creation of new policies. So that then becomes effectively the same as creating a new plan. So that goes through the whole process you would do with a neighbourhood plan from the outset. So you would need an independent examination and then a referendum to bring it into force. So that's the sort of the bare bones, I suppose, of reviewing neighbourhood plans and the reason behind it. You mentioned that Peter Biggers had done some work. I don't know what that is, or whether that's led you to any sort of particular conclusions about the way that the neighbourhood plan has been used and the way that you would expect it to be used, and whether there's any recommendations in terms of changes from that.
Yeah, well, not particularly at the moment. I mean, one of the questions I have, I suppose, is how does the plan age, in the sense? I mean, it was made middle of 2017. You see reference to planning information where it says after 2 years or whatever that the plan is losing some of its strength, as it were, when it comes to be used. How does that work in reality, and in terms of if we were to decide to would, depending on which review kind of level we went to, would that strengthen it more or less, depending on the sort of strength? I mean, if we went for the substantial one, for instance, would it basically be a new plan, even though it still be presumably the same plan period, etc.?
Yeah, well, the last point first, substantial review would effectively become akin to a new plan. The difference between a substantial review and starting a plan afresh is that if you are just reviewing the plan, you'd be looking to gather evidence and present evidence which relates just to the modifications that you're making. It wouldn't necessarily relate to the policies that you might wish to keep or the policies that you might wish to delete. And when it comes to plans aging, I mean, the fundamental test that's applied should be by the planners and the planning committee at the county council, and separately by planning inspectors, will be about the extent to which the plan still aligns with the framework, the national planning policy framework. So as long as the policies in the plan align with the national planning policy framework, which is more recent, that's from 2019, then the plan holds strong. You can use it as a reason for granting permission or for refusing to grant permission. So it's alignment with national policy that kind of comes into play there. And separately, there's the alignment with strategic policies within Northumberland. So that's where the new local plan would come into play. So if the new local plan was adopted and said something substantially different to the policies in the neighbourhood plan, then the new local plan would take precedence because it would be younger, in effect. It would be the most recently adopted policy document. So at that point, you would then have a plan where, a neighbourhood plan, where you have policies which are largely of no great relevance to the determination of a planning application in certain circumstances. So it's that sort of thing that you would need to look at, but it's difficult to do that until you know that the new local plan is going to say something different to your neighbourhood plan. So it's a kind of, think about it now, understand how you think the plan is being used currently, whether you think there are things that the plan should be doing, the neighbourhood plan should be doing or could be doing, that's different to that's in the new local plan, and then wait and consider, once the new local plan is in place, whether you need something else for ANIC and DENIC that would add to what's in the local plan. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to it. Linda, you've got a question.
Yeah, can I just ask a question? I think we've become aware of certainly one omission that possibly should have been included but wasn't, and that's around young people's housing need, and particularly those who need some kind of supported housing or who are homeless. And it was admitted because the housing needs assessment that fed into the plan omitted young people altogether. And we're doing some work on that. So there's two questions. One, is that a reason to, obviously it's a big policy change, so it would be a substantial change. But secondly, do you in NCC produce housing needs assessments, or do you commission them out?
Right, on the housing needs assessment work, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, because the current housing needs assessment is now 5 years old.
Yeah,
so coming to the end of its
appreciate
life.
that. We were coincidentally just talking about this yesterday with colleagues in the housing policy team. The County Council has commissioned a number of housing needs assessments, I think including the one for Alnwick. Did we partly fund it with the Town Council? And we've done similar work at Hexham, stuff at Cramlington. There's a mixture really. There are some housing needs assessments that have been carried out by the likes of CAN, Community Action Northumberland, which have kind of been worked for parish councils and town councils. There are other assessments which we're aware of that others commission. So, developers generally will come along and commission. We don't, as far as I'm aware, have a programme of carrying out housing needs assessments across the county. If there are resources to do that sort of work, it's more likely to be targeted at those places where neighbourhood plans are being proposed. And that's how we targeted the last set of funding that we had. We had a little bit of funding, and that got targeted towards certain areas where neighbourhood plans were in progress. So no, we don't, as a matter of course, look to create or undertake housing needs assessments across the piece, but would certainly target resources where there's need. In terms of your question about housing for younger people, I mean, there are going to be policies in the local plan that look at housing, supporting housing for different groups. Vulnerable people, I know, and older people are generally included in those sort of policies. The issue with creating policy, planning policy in regard to particular types of housing is that it's quite easy to say we would like to support that type of housing, and probably nobody would argue with that. The more difficult part about it is how you make that happen. And you don't necessarily need a planning policy to support housing for younger people in a town. You know, if you have a town where there's a general presumption in favour of development inside the sort of the limits of the town. I know you haven't got settlement boundaries because the town council didn't want to do that with the neighbourhood plan. That there's been a change of mind on that, and that's now covered in the local plan. So assuming the local plan gets adopted, you'll have sort of development, the extent of development parameters in planning policy terms. Within that area of the town, it's generally okay, subject to other environmental considerations, amenity considerations, to allow development. It's how you make development happen that serves the community that you see as being most in need, that is the bit that requires investment rather than planning policy. So yes, have a planning policy that says that. Yes, it may change the plan substantially. Will it do what you want? I don't know. There may be other agents, other partners that you need to work more closely with to actually deliver that. We're finding that with housing for older people in particular, where there's, you know, there clearly is a need across Northumberland because of the aging population. And the difficulty is trying to ensure that there's investment in that type of property, which on occasion can be more expensive than normal market housing, because you may look to have better accessibility provision in that type of accommodation. So it's how you achieve that we need to think quite carefully about.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So anybody else? Oh, Peter's got a question for you.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for coming along tonight, David. It's a really useful talk you gave there. Just one question from me. My instinct tells me that the use classes order could be potentially quite significant, not just for our neighbourhood plan now and whatever the refresh might look like, but potentially the local plan, which is about to be adopted. It seems as if it's sort of slipped in under the radar. It could have quite an impact.
Yeah, we've had to make some changes to, or suggested some changes to the local plan at the request of the inspector to address those things that only just came in at the back end of last year about the new use classes. So I think we've tried to sort of cobble together some words which don't particularly talk anymore about things like B1, B2 and B8 uses, which is what your neighbourhood plan policies talk about, because they're not necessarily relevant anymore. So we're looking to use language around employment generating uses, things like that, rather than talking about B1 uses, because they don't exist anymore. They're all rolled into what's called Class E now. And with the town centre, the shops, again, it's a difficult thing to look at in policy terms. And it's further compounded by the government's current consultation, which is to allow change of use from shops to housing as a permitted development, so something that you don't need planning permission for. So that will even further change the appearance of the high streets across the country. It's not, it's not just going to be local; it's going to be national impact.
I suppose the other question I've got, or anyone else has, is what sort of level of support can NCC give if we go into a review?
Well, we've got a team, my team, who were quite heavily involved, I think, in the original Alnwick and Denwick neighbourhood plan. So we're here to support on that. The team's still the same sort of strength, so we've got enough staff to help parishes across Northumberland do this, and that's been confirmed by a recent sort of restructuring at the County Council's planning department. So we're maintaining and retaining a neighbourhood planning team. So we'll be there to support with advice, guidance, some practical support, some hands-on support if you need it, if you want it. And separately, you'll be able to get grant funding again and technical support through the national programme of neighbourhood planning support, which is run through Locality, an organisation that administers grant aid and other technical support packages from a firm of consultants, ACOM. They have a contract with the government to support neighbourhood planning groups. So it's much the same as when you prepared the plan originally. There'll be the same amount of support in financial terms, I believe. In fact, it's a little bit more. It's gone up with inflation in effect. So yeah, we're here to support. There'll be money from government to do that, and there'll be other technical support as well, largely depending on what you want to do with the plan.
Oh, well, that's useful to know, because I kind of thought we'd probably, well, not so much from NCC's point of view, but in terms of financial, I thought we'd kind of be on our own now with reviews. But then it's good to know that there is something there. Does anybody else have any questions for David? Yes, Peter.
I know it's basically around the neighbourhood plan that you're discussing tonight, David, but I'm just wondering what thoughts you have about council-owned land. Some members of the town council have had some ideas regarding the Old Duchess School site, which is a massive area of land that belongs to the county council. Now, an idea that I had once over, I know that when new developments, housing developments come along, that a certain percentage has to be affordable. Sometimes I think that maybe we might benefit if those supposed units or budget, let's say, take Cousins as an example, when they're doing, 80 houses or something, and 10 have got to be funded that way. Could we not use that whole site as a supported housing area? Rather than them build 10 houses on the site that they're on, they could probably give the money to build 20 houses on council-owned land.
Right. Yeah, there are provisions. I mean, the principle around affordable housing is generally that it should be provided on the site. So if, as you say, you've got a scheme for 80 houses, the expectation is it's reasonable that there would be affordable housing on that scheme. However, there are provisions whereby if it's not appropriate to do that for a range of reasons, then financial contributions can be secured in lieu of providing the houses, and that financial contribution will be spent on affordable housing elsewhere, hopefully in the vicinity. But the council does that currently. The policies that operate now have collected, I don't know how much money there is, but there's certainly collected money from developers to direct towards affordable housing.
Okay, thank you.
And separately, the council's got a scheme, or it's certainly talked about and budgeted for a scheme for investment in affordable housing across the county. So that's there. It'd be a case of persuading the right people to spend their money in the right place from your perspective, I guess.
Okay. It was just, I just thought it was a great opportunity with a very, very large town centre area that I guess some of it could be sold up as private development to fund more. It's just volumes of houses that I'm thinking of. Instead of building 5-bedroom houses everywhere, we should be building 1- and 2-bedroom houses, bungalows. I mean, the bungalows that they've built down on the Peters Mill site, I believe, I think there's 6 there. They look absolutely fantastic. That's like 6 new homes. That's only taken up the land of probably 3, 5-bedroom houses.
Yep, I can't disagree with anything that you've said. As ever, trying to make that sort of thing happen relies on evidence that demonstrates why you have to encourage or support or require 2-bedroom bungalows rather than 5-bedroom houses. And there will be evidence out there.
Yeah,
but it's quite a difficult balancing act to try and sort that out in terms of mix of housing that's needed in an area. And that's kind of where your housing needs assessments come in.
Yeah.
And they're not just about affordables. It's also about the type, size. Because
can I just reply to that? Sorry, is that all right, Martin? It's just links into just what you've said, because you said before about builders or developers often doing housing needs assessments. The developers for this site did one which was very different to the one that we'd had commissions, and said that 1- and 2-bedroom houses weren't the priority in Alnwick, and their housing needs assessment showed that it was upwards of 3.
Yeah, again, that was very much the topic of discussions we had yesterday. It's about, I mean, basically what we're looking to do through a planning policy is to seek ways in which the county council can validate or confirm that they agree, as in the planning service agrees with the outcome of housing needs assessments, whether they're submitted as part of a planning application, whether they're created in order to support new planning policies. We need to have some sort of common methodology that we can use in order to judge the validity of housing needs assessments, in my view.
Julia. You're on mute, Julia.
Yeah, I'm still there. Thought I'd done it. Sorry. A lot of the emphasis of this conversation is inevitably on new build and planning around new build. And where you have a neighbourhood plan that's beginning to age, and a housing needs assessment that's very much aged, I'm interested to know how some of the initial commitments, for instance, to affordability, are monitored, where you get into the realms of resale of properties that were originally affordable, and how do you incorporate a much more layered approach to where does that affordability get sustained, and also interested in there's been various conversations within the council and elsewhere about refit, and so the conversations I'm hearing are about new build pretty much all the time. And we've had a lot of new build in Alnwick. So where is the the conversation, the monitoring of the impact of who has moved into there. How have we addressed affordability to whom?
I'm not sure how to respond to the last part, but I can tell you that in terms of the controls, I only can't respond because I don't know who does do the monitoring of that. I know house builders do, but they won't tell us. They won't give us the information. So we don't know who actually does move in or how things change over time. What we do know is that where affordable housing is secured through the planning system, it's done normally through legal agreements, which are called planning obligations, that are under what you'll have heard as Section 106 agreements. What they do, they act in perpetuity to retain that property. It runs with the land, so it runs with the property as being affordable. And affordable housing has got a range of different definitions these days. So you can run from discount market units, which are houses for sale, which are sold at a discount of between 80 and 70% of the market value. And that must happen every time there's an exchange, every time a property moves. And others are kept for social rent. So that will be managed and monitored through registered providers. Effectively, affordable housing for rent is managed through that sector now. So there are controls in place to ensure that housing that's secured as being affordable is affordable into the future, at least on the terms that it was secured for. So yes, house prices will go up, but discount market units will always have to be sold at 70% or 80% of the market value.
I think through some recent direct experience of this, one of the things that seems to happen is that estate agents put the thing on the market or value it very high, so that the 70% is actually more or less what the market price, that has been happening in Annex. So I'm just, keen to see how these things fit together, how the 106 process and its follow-up fits with forward planning.
Yeah, well, we do actually monitor sales and the letting of affordable housing by way of monitoring Section 106 agreements. So we have two officers, they're called housing enablers, and they work with the affordable housing sector, and they effectively vet, I think, applicants for houses that are secured in that way. So there are ways in which the letting or the sale is monitored by the council through that process, basically monitoring the Section 106 agreements.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to take questions from Martin and then Jeff. Obviously, we could continue this discussion on that because there's all sorts of aspects of planning that we're important. But if we take 2 more points from Martin and then Jeff.
Going to unmute myself. Good evening, everybody. It's just on the case of which Julia's pointing out there is the landlord type of situations. With me dealing property with for my living, it comes across quite a number of times where the rich millionaire buys up 2 to 3 houses on a brand new estate and then chooses to rent them out. And I just wondered if there's any way that can be monitored in a way that, and I've even heard of cases where people are buying affordable property with the 60 and 70% criteria, buying them outright and putting their family in, which kind of, as you can tell, if somebody is a millionaire and wants to buy a nice little house for his daughter or his son, then that's just taking a property from the marketplace that is designed for people who are not in such a fortunate position. And I've actually been involved with another scheme, which is another question really, is the scheme still available where a landlord can bring his property into the marketplace and still use the Home for Northumberland website? Don't know if you know anything about that, David.
Not the second part, but the first part comes back to monitoring Section 106 agreements, which I know we do. And I know, I won't say what it is, but I know there's a specific case where somebody did just that. They took a property on, which was an affordable house, and then subsequently let it through Airbnb, which wasn't hard to find. and it was well known to the parish council. So it's eyes and ears, local people telling the county council, monitoring and enforcement teams what's going on. And then when you've got a Section 106 agreement, the legal recourse is by injunction. So, and that's hard work, but normally enforcement works through threats before you actually get to serving notices, and it worked in that instance. But there are legal powers there to enforce, and people who buy property knowing that there's restrictions on it do so at their own risk. So yeah, we're there to do that.
Jeff.
Yeah, just on the affordable housing, I want to put a shout out for the housing associations, David. I'm sure you have worked with them, but they have excellent schemes to manage these situations. For example, Nomad, who I believe are now ISOS, they have a scheme where they build houses themselves, and they staircase. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Where they'll there's someone wanting to buy a house, they can't afford a house. They'll sell it to them for 25% of the cost of the house. But they have a scheme where over time they can buy an extra 25% and then an extra, and they can eventually end up owning the house. But built into that scheme is if they ever come to sell it, and this is coming back to what Julia was saying earlier about these affordable houses getting back onto the open market. In those schemes with the housing association, it's built into the contract when you purchase that house, is that you must offer it, if you want to sell it, back to the housing association first, so that the housing association can then buy that house back and then resell it to someone who needs it. So I would encourage the county council, if they're not already doing so, to get more involved with housing associations and that type of scheme. Whereas Julia says, we can then keep those houses in the affordable market.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. The housing enablers do exactly that. The two officers deal directly every day with the affordable housing providers, registered providers, and they know the circumstances. I mean, what you're talking about, I think, is shared equity ownership, where you buy a bit and the housing association keeps the other part, and you're right to get the opportunity to buy it back. But yeah, our housing enablers work very closely with all of the housing providers across Northumberland, so they know the local picture, they know what's going on, and they know where investment's required effectively because of the conversations that they have with the registered providers. So you'll often get a case where you might expect more affordable housing, but nobody will invest. The housing providers won't invest for various reasons, and that can be a frustration to local people. I guess it's just part and parcel of the model that registered providers operate, which is they will provide affordable housing for people in local areas where they know there is a need for those affordable houses. It's not a perception of need, it's an actual need that they've calculated, because they're investing in building property that they're going to have to let to get their money back. So they're businesses, but they're providing a sort of social good as well.
Quick question from John.
Yeah, it's one quite simple way of keeping control over this whole business of affordable housing is, for the first 25 years at least of the house's life, it must only be bought and sold through a department of the county council. Straightforward. Then you go, if the county council are really serious about it, then they've got to put some effort into it. I mean, monitoring is all very well, but it's airy-fairy. And I'm afraid developers are just getting away with whatever they want to, regardless. So, if you really want to get this organised, then that's one way of doing it.
Well, I think if I've got to defend the council, I would say the council is doing that. They've actually set about a programme of house building. So we're one of the few councils that actually do that. So, I think we are doing something in that way.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm just meaning from private housing developments where they have a certain number of so-called
I think that's a different and alternative, and a very interesting model of housing provision, and one which happens in other parts of Europe, I think, but not here yet.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I think we'll draw it to a close, David, or else we'll be keeping you here all night.
Nothing else to do.
I'm sure we can keep on thinking about questions about neighbourhood planning. But that's been useful, I think, to give us a kind of update on where we are with our thinking. Probably what we need to do now is have a bit more careful think about our plan and the areas that may need some work and to see how that moves forward. But we'll absolutely be coming back to your team to help us with that process, I think.
Great.
In the coming months. So thank you very much for coming along, and we'll no doubt speak to you at some point in the near future.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Nice to see you all.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll move on to next agenda item, which is approval of minutes of previous meeting, 17th of December. Do I have a proposal? Yes, thank you, Martin. Seconder, Jeff. All those in favour? That's everybody, I think. Yeah. Do we have any matters arising from the minutes? We need to go through them page by page. Page 1, 2. Yes, Janet.
Oh, just take myself off. Just an update on, an update on streets naming, Peter, Martin.
Oh yes, good.
Yep. Two street naming, Windy Edge. Spoke to Michelle, who's in oh, am I off? Yeah. Spoke to Michelle Carr. Apparently we had been asked about the street names in 2019. And we had said that we didn't have an issue with the names of the streets. I did find the minutes, and we did actually say that. So.
And were we actually given a list of names of those
Yes,
streets?
we were. Just 4 names on the original. Oh, that's me. That's me parallel processing. Yes, we had. We'd been given the original 4 names that they wanted to use.
Yes, Jeff?
Was it made, sorry, John, I vaguely remember this, but I don't think it was made clear that they were going to rename the street. Or am I wrong?
Sorry, Jeff, say again.
I don't think it was made clear. I vaguely remember that, but I don't recall anything which said they were going to rename Fisher Lane. Is that's the one we're talking about, isn't it?
Peters Mill.
Peters Mill, sorry. It wasn't made clear.
Peters Mill Lane isn't an address.
Sorry,
there are houses off Peters Mill Lane, but that might not be their address, I suppose.
Technically they're Allenmouth Road, but they do refer to Peters Mill Lane when they write their own address. The ones that are actually on the lane.
You're on mute, Janet. Can't hear you.
No.
Janet, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah. Sorry, I've got 3 sets of words. I'm hearing the meeting 3 times.
Right, can I just make my point again, Martin?
Yep.
What I said, Janet, was I vaguely recall that, but I don't recall them saying they were going to rename something.
No, because Peters Mill Lane doesn't officially exist.
Tell that to the residents.
Oh dear. We let them get away with murder. Get away
I'm
with murder.
clicking it 3 times. I'm sorry. I'm gonna.
Okay. I don't know whether there's anything we can do about this. Linda, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I suspect there's nothing we can do. I don't recall any signage saying that it was Peters Mill Lane. It is Peters Mill Lane on some maps, which means that it's been in existence for some time. Wasn't an adopted road, so I suspect there's not much we can do about it.
Yes, Jeff.
Can we still object, Martin? I think we should object to the renaming. But it's locally known as Peters Mill Lane. The residents that live there refer to it as Peters Mill Lane. And as Linda says, it is referred to on some maps as Peters Mill Lane. So I think we should make a strong objection to a developer coming in and renaming it and calling it Somerset Drive, which has no relation whatsoever to the area.
If I may just say, if it's been on the maps for at least 21 years, then it does actually exist in law. If it's been on maps for that length of time, at least 21 years.
Yes, Peter.
The only problem with that is that the lane doesn't exist anymore. It's not where it was. It's completely in a different place to where it was prior to that. So it's a difficult one to try and say, oh, well, that's Peters Mill Lane, because it used to go straight down to the corner.
Well, that's true.
It doesn't anymore. It weaves its way through. It's just...
Yeah, that's true.
It's a difficult one. Maybe what we can do is ask them to reincorporate it into the next part of the development. If you know, because if it's passed at county council level, then you can't change. You know, if people have got an address and you cannot change it after that.
Yes, Linda.
When my house was built,
Peters
it
Mill
was...
Lane, sorry.
Oh, go on, Linda, sorry.
Peters Mill Lane exists as it was up to the end of the 2 small cottages.
Yeah.
So up to the point where it turns off to the left.
Yeah.
And then it curves as opposed to going straight down as it did before.
Yeah.
But
they haven't renamed the top end of it, though, have they?
They have. Somerset Drive starts from Allenmouth Road.
But what's the address for Heather in the cottage at the back?
Well, technically they're on Allenmouth Road. Their address technically is Allenmouth Road, but of course if you put Allenmouth Road on, people can't find it. So they always use Peters Mill Lane as, you know, as their address. Garden Cottage, Peters Mill Lane. In that case, there
can be an argument for that, because all they've done is widen an existing road, and that wasn't a private road until you actually got past the 2 cottages.
That's right.
Can we, Janet, can we explore this a little bit further? It looks like it's going to be difficult because you're kind of in the situation where you're going to have one street runs into another street, as it were, and that always causes confusion in terms of people delivering leaflets, mail or anything else. And there's plenty of that goes on these days. But could we just explore a little bit further? Because would we literally be asking to rename a road and change people's addresses, or is there some intermediate kind of compromise, if you like, with regard to this? I suspect it's going to be difficult altogether. Martin, Anton.
Okay, if you think back, people, there's a house down there that's up for sale, a derelict house. That'll be address. It'll be Peters Mill Lane. The bike track is Peters Mill Lane. it has to be kept. You can't be changing it to Summerhill Embankment or whatever. Look at the jet. It's Peters Mill Lane. It has to be kept as that, because otherwise, how does that house that's lying boarded up? What has happened there? Where's the address going to there? The houses that are in the lane to the left, as you turn in coming out of Alnwick, that's the entrance. It's just making a dog's dinner or something that simple. If people start naming things just for the benefit of being prestige, we'll be in a right pickle. So I think we should stick back and make sure that that's kept as Peters Mill Lane, as it was, as it will, and whatever happens on the estate, well, that's that. The streets will come their own name. But for the benefit of what I do for my living, the address for a property is a big part when you're doing energy reports or anything on the postal codes and whatever. And Linda, I'll know the issue Sheila have in the houses behind. It's Allenmouth Road, but Allenmouth Road is a house three houses back onto the field where what looks onto them. So the point I'm meaning is stick to Peters Mill Lane, and if we can't, then we need to contest it, because that's part of what it was and it should be going forward.
Okay, can we ask Janet to explore a little bit further and see where we are kind of with this, because exactly how streets are designated, I'm not entirely clear, and how addresses are designated, I'm not entirely clear, and what we would have to do to be able to contest it. Obviously, we can shout a lot, but that's we do a lot of that anyway sometimes. To actually get any meaningful change, what would the procedure actually be? Because if it's been designated as an address, there will be a procedure for changing the street name, if that's where we would have to go. And to look and see whether any of the other addresses, as Martin points out, any of the other addresses along there, houses along there, do have the address of Peters Mill Lane still. If we could do that, Janet, that might be helpful, because I think we're quite firm on what we think, but what we can actually do about it is we're less clear about. I think is basically where we are with this. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, so on with Mint. I think we're on page 2. Page 3. Yes, Jeff.
Mute.
Sorry, can I just ask Linda, were you able to have that meeting, Linda, that with the enforcement officer?
No, it was cancelled because of COVID and no site visits being done. So I've asked Peter to request a Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think this is on the agenda a little further down, Jeff, doing the edge stuff.
Yeah, we'll pick it up further down, Jeff. So where are we at? Page 3, page 4. And page 5. So it's page 5? No, that's the end. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. 2-minute outcomes. Sorry, 2-minute responses made since last meeting. Do we have any, Janet? Do we have any responses since the last meeting, Janet? Are you hearing us okay, Janet?
No, sorry, I'm getting everything in duplicate.
Is that
I'm getting the YouTube streaming after you're speaking, so when it coming back at me, fine. Yeah, we just had the one that went into county, which was the Marks and Spencer's Unit 1. It was the signage, the temporary signage that they wanted between November and January. And we had no objections, but we were disappointed that it was a retrospective planning application.
Okay, I don't think it was signage, Janet. It was a cold store or something of that order, I think. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we move on to planning applications. So the first one on your agenda is 20-04113 FUL, Lone End, Argyle Terrace, Alnwick, construction of self-contained cabin with garden area, including parking. Now, as I said, I've got a declared interest in this, so we appoint a chair for this item. I propose Martin Harrington.
Right, no bother, Martin. I'll take over the reins.
Thank you, Martin.
I'll have a little look at the bear with us a second. I'm just getting onto my agenda. I need to click onto the link. So, Janet, can you help? Here she goes. Quality. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably, you'll come across, you'll probably remember that this application's been in, I think, twice. One of the comments that we made in the past was about access, etc. So this is the probably the best drawing that's in the application pack as to how the site is laid out. If you bear with me, I'll just get I'll just share something else with you which is relevant, which is some summarised comments from Highways, which is worth having a read if you haven't done so already. So they're not against the proposal in principle, but there are a number of conditions that they'd like to see attached to the application. The bottom one, the Highways works, is obviously potentially significant, I think, on that.
The thing for me personally is like the narrowness of that road. Where it turns up into there. You can't do anything about that, I suppose. But what I did read on part of it was it's saying that there's so many parking spaces available that they're actually shared parking spaces with the existing dwelling. So the parking, as you'll see on the map, at the bottom of the page is the hatched area, proposed 1-bedroom cabin and decking. And then you've got a car, then you've got the refuse bins, and you've got like a turning circle in the centre. The piece at the top of the page, I suppose, is the existing parking. So really you're only getting one parking space. So it's not fantastic by any means or form, but if somebody comes, the point being is what they're saying is existing parking doesn't really exist. There's not actually parking for 5 or 6 cars. I can't remember what it is now. I did look at it in detail when I first got the application up. At the end of the day, it is what it is. Unless anybody else has got any comments, it's just a 1-bedroom. I call them the love shacks, me, because that's all they are, little wood huts with not much else happening. And somebody's trying to capitalise, I would suppose, on holiday accommodation rather than it being a dwelling for people to live in every day of the year. So it would be interesting to see if you can put a comment in on that basis. If it's for people to live in, happy days. But if not, if for somebody as a holiday accommodation, then it's a different ball game. Jeff Watson.
Mute.
I think Peter was in front of me, Martin.
Sorry, beg your pardon. Big small screen. Peter Edge is at the bottom of the screen. Sorry, Peter, you're in the dark down there, boy. You're in the dark.
All right. That's all right. That's all right. Perhaps you might be able to advise on this. I seem to recall from the last time we had a look at this, the actual construction is, it's quite tall. It's much taller than like a one-story sort of affair. So it does seem like, I don't know if you can pull that up, Peter, whether that may be possible to just have a quick look at that. But it certainly seemed and sort of occurred to me afterwards, it's more like a two-story construction, this. So, Martin, if you know them, you'll be able to advise on this, but it seemed much taller than something that was like small.
Aye. So in reality, it is quite tall because you've got the pitched slope and roof.
On stilts, I don't know.
The thing is, with these plans, we don't get to see the dimensions on them. That's always kind of something I've always said. But practically, I'll be careful with my wording here. It's I want to say it was quality, normal, residential property. This is saying to me every day of the week, it's a holiday accommodation, a quirky holiday type accommodation.
Mhm.
Jeff Watson.
Yeah, I'll make the same comment as I did on the first application, Martin, and that is with the health and safety. As far as I can see from the plans, and I don't look like they've changed much from last time, there's only one way in and one way out. And I was querying what the heating would be, what the health and safety issues were of people actually staying in a basically in a hut. It's a glorified hut. So I would hope that the planners, when they're assessing this application, will take that into account.
I think again, Jeff, it comes back to this situation where the planning authority has certain criteria which it must hit way above our heads. So if they hit all the criteria, they do not want to have an objection or an appeal. So if it hits all what it needs to hit, we cannot really object. All we can do is make comments as we do with our concerns or anything that may be relevant to pass on to the planning department, which that's what we're doing.
I'm right in saying though, Martin, aren't I, that it has to meet the building regulations. And if people are going to be staying there and sleeping there, then it has to meet those regulations. And all I'm saying is I think we should flag that up, because it doesn't look, to my untrained eye, it doesn't look that it doesn't look very safe. I certainly wouldn't want to spend the night in it.
What the class it is, Jeff, is a non-temporary structure. It's not fastened down with bricks and mortar. It's not a foundationed building. It's got stilts. You could probably just take that apart and put it on the back of a wagon in 20 minutes, half an hour. It's not a permanent structure. It is accommodation for a rental. That's what it is. So all our comments are relevant. So if anybody else has comments, by all means, let's make them. But if it's not offending anybody and it hits all the boxes, we kind of see a great lot. But Peter, the window cleaner, wants to tell me a story.
Is the application as a commercial venture, or is it as a, what is it as?
Mr. Peter Haley.
I don't think it states it, unless Janet can let me just get a quick look at the application form. Bear with me.
Just because the danger is, if you get it passed as
residential,
and then a bit like some other developments in Alnwick, you all of a sudden you come along and you change it to commercial use.
Well, you're tipping on my key point of retrospective, Peter. You kind of put a little fire in my ear there.
Because once it's up, then it seems to be easy for them to change it over, which is, I mean, you know, if it's in the right place, I don't have an objection to that. But this maybe just isn't quite the right place for this kind of dwelling anyway. But
well, I think we're on the right lines. But at the end of the day, we can make comments.
It doesn't reference either in the application form, Peter. I've just been through it.
So if it's permitted development, you say there'll not be any regulations for building control or investigate or anything like that. It's just a case of, do you think it's all right? If it is, we can make our comments. We've made our comments, and that's all you can do. Or you can request that it's investigated on its future use for rateable value. That's the way you can catch them.
Yeah.
The rateable value issue, because is that classed as a residential or a commercial entity, then it has a rateable value, then it has to pay a business rate. So in my comments, I don't know if we're getting anywhere down the line, but we're looking on the commercial side against residential, and should that be explored for that reason? And Peter's already put the light, health and safety issues of that site. So is that kind of everybody's thoughts on it? John Humphrey's got any idea?
Well, if you want it to go ahead, it can go ahead. As you say, there's probably no technical reasons why it shouldn't, but it's not ideal. But I do totally agree that it should be classified at this stage as to whether it's business or private.
See, you can't put conditions on this property. If it is passed, that the condition is that it's only used for residential and not holiday let.
Yeah,
That can be a condition of the plan and approval.
should
So
be.
if we're looking down that route, then Linda's got her hand up, so on, Linda.
They did that with Thornbury, didn't they? The pods at Thornbury, they made it, those a condition of couldn't be
Yeah.
used.
So they're going to be storage units, Linda.
Yeah,
The pods have to be storage units.
yeah. Judging by the number of cars that are always there, it's interesting.
Well, keep them thoughts to ourselves because we all know where we're going. It's nice, everybody's developing stuff and whatever. But I think if we can look down that line, the condition of not being anything else but accommodation for that dwelling holder and not a holiday let, or if it is a holiday let, then it is a business rated appropriately because that's where we all know where things are going. Does that kind of assume everybody?
Yeah, seems fair. Yes.
Janet got a grab of that? Perfect. Happy days. Right, that's me done. Martin Swinbank, get the gin and tonic in.
Thank you, Martin. So we move on to the second application, which is 20-04142 FUL Woodland Lodge, Greensfield Farm Annex. Construction of detached double garage with studio above.
Okay, that's the site plan there. The other document, bear with me, that's maybe of interest. Sorry, I'm just closing some other documents.
Familiar?
Can you see that new document, can you?
Mm-hmm.
The garage, yeah. I'll just what they're proposing.
Have you got the plan, Peter, which shows it in relation to the house that it sits beside?
Yeah, that was on just before there. Martin. Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Looks very nice.
No problem.
Okay, I've got a question from Linda, I think, to start with.
Well, I think this is another, it's similar to the other one. What's it going to be used for? It's got an ensuite bathroom and a bedroom, sleeping area. And it's similar. Is it residential or is it going to be for business use? And other than that, I haven't got any comments. I think it's the design and everything is fine.
Martin?
Unmuting, there we go. Yes, I think I'm keeping with Linda as well. I'm seeing another lad who's been busy with it. It's a beautiful, he's made a beautiful job up there of the property. If that's what he chooses to do, but it is the line of, that's what he's applying for, is a garage with some accommodation above. I don't know if that's against the law or if it has to be rated or whatever. But apart from that, no, I've not got any issues. It's been a grand job up to now, and it would be in keeping now, I suppose. So, no, that's all I've got to say.
Peter?
Is it a new build or is it conversion?
It's from what I understand, it's a new build. There's a new build house that we passed a year or two ago, not that long ago actually, and the house is now up on that site. And this is an additional application to build a garage with obviously accommodation above it.
I did walk past there at the weekend, and the development itself looks, pretty good. It is enhancing something that's been pretty run down for a lot of years, so I don't have any great qualms with that.
Any other questions or thoughts? I suppose my thoughts are kind of in line, really. Architecturally, I don't think there's a great issue. Site-wise, it's surrounded by those trees as well, so it's not going to be very visible. The issue that goes through my mind is it going to be let as a holiday let, or is it going to be a granny flat, or is it going to be just used by the owners of the house? And that is the only factor there that in terms of, and Martin I think has covered it in terms of whether it's business or residential, and that is the only comment I would put to the application, that the authority need to be clear what it is. Yes, Peter.
I'm just looking at covenants that are put on planning applications, because on the deeds in my house was built 38 years ago now, and there's a covenant on mine that it can't be used as a holiday let. It can be rented out, because there's other houses on this estate now that have, gone from the original owners, have been bought up by investors, and they're now let. But it does say on my deeds, same with Allaburnley, mind, and there are people abusing it down there, because I know of 2 holiday lets down Allaburnley, and they shouldn't be doing it. Who enforces the covenants, and B, who puts the covenants on?
Can I help you?
Linda first.
Sorry, it's a good point, Peter. The beaches near us, we've just discovered that has a covenant on it that it has to be for residential use, and it's been bought as a what's it called? It's a holiday let. The other point I was going to make is we've got a similar situation here, that we converted the upstairs, which was already there, of our garage into a studio, and that was part of permissible development. Now it's a studio, it's Dave's studio. We won't be doing anything else with it, but it doesn't prevent other people when we move on to do anything. So it's quite a difficult area.
Martin?
Yeah. No, this is my forte, as you'll know. But what happens is, when the person buys that property, they sit down in front of the solicitor, or in these times they'll have a meeting of some description, and these facts are pointed out to them at that stage. You're buying a property, you must not rent it out as a holiday cottage, or you must do this, or you must do that, the points that Peter's made. So it's up to the property owner at that stage. When they buy the property, they'll know what they're buying. So there's a good case in Allarmouth, the old council flats at Allarmouth. There's a stipulation in there that it must be bought with somebody who works within Northumberland, nobody else. And it tells them that in the property particulars when they're buying it. But that just came to light last year when the property was trying to be bought by somebody from out the area, and then they come across the hard water on it. But at the end of the day, it's in a legal document. However people choose to manage with that is up to themselves. But who polices it, Peter, is the local authority.
Peter Haley.
I was just going to say, I did speak to Linda about this last week, and I feel as if it's an area that we should be more familiar with, particularly in the context of renewing the neighbourhood plan, because I think holiday lets has the potential to be a bigger and bigger issue for this town, especially in light of the developments of the gardens and the Europe's biggest sort of play area for families and things. So it's something we should get on top of.
Yeah. It's something I think we may need to it would be worth investigating in terms of whether the county council have any expertise in terms of that. It would be worth getting somebody to come and talk to us about that, because absolutely I think it's with regard to neighbourhood planning going forward, it's something that we do need to get a handle of, because we just don't know how many holiday lets we've got in Alnwick, and it's obviously increasing, and we just need to look at the villages on the coast and see what effects it can have if it runs out of control. Because particularly they are buying up, as we've been talking about earlier tonight, they've been buying up quite often the cheaper properties, which are the ones that people who can't get onto the housing ladder, can't indeed in the house at all, would only be occupying. Yes, John.
Yeah, as regards to who puts the covenants on, it's my understanding, certainly as far as Fairfields are concerned, that the covenants were put on by Northumberland Estates. when they sold the land or leased the land to the developer.
Yes, I mean, if this site is owned by somebody outright, the planning authority won't be able to put covenant on it as such. There has to be some kind of condition on the application, I guess. Linda?
Yeah, it's the landowner, because the covenant on the beaches and the other houses that were built on this site was put on by the then owner when he sold the land.
But what we're talking about here really is probably we've got a landowner, and it matters what county council can do to ensure their use of that property and how that is managed going forward. All we can really do in that respect is flag the issue up. I'm sure they'll be well aware of it, to make sure that the correct rateable value is applied and the rates collected, etc., etc. I think, but in terms of going forward, I think it's something we do need to learn a bit more about, and if we could find an officer who could come and talk to us about that, that would be useful. Peter. John?
Yeah, I'll just say, I'm sure if we approach Northumberland Estates, they'd be more than happy to give us a list of the covenants on the various estates that they're involved with. So I don't think there'd be any problem there.
Yeah, and in that respect, I'm sure. But in terms of the second home and holiday let issue, I think that's a different issue. Okay, in terms of this application, then nobody got any other comments on this? We're all happy to let that go through with those comments. Okay, thank you. So we move on to there was additional. I've got two additional ones that hopefully everybody's seen. Janet sent around later. So 204,324 ADE Dorothy Perkins Retail Limited, 36 to 38, Hongate Within. Advertisement consent, company name and logo cut from 5mm acrylic and mounted to stone fascia. Projecting hanging sign, painted wooden board with vinyl applied lettering and logo. There we are.
Okay.
It's below the town council office, is it not?
It is.
Probably is the town council office. See Janet there at the window.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we've got so this is stone facade, isn't it? But it's a newish building. It's not a new building. So we've got this new signage, and we've got on the front, and then we've got a sign which sticks out. We don't have much information about the smaller sign, I don't think. It seems like it's wood and metal, but I don't know whether they have a lot of information about it. Anybody have any thoughts?
No, that's...
Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry.
Just on the hanging sign, I would prefer that to another, what's it called, sandwich board thing on the pavement.
Okay, that's a good point, and yeah, so that's fine. Jeff?
Just to say, it looks okay. There are other side signs, what do they call those? The hanging signs in the street, so it's in keeping with the other signs in the street. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, personally.
Is it a hanging sign, or is it just a fixed?
There's two. There's one that's against the wall, and there's another one which comes out from the wall, which is the hanging sign.
Yeah, is it actually hang from hinges as such, like a pub sign? Or is it, yeah.
But if you look along the street, there are other. I mean, Superdrug has one, which is just along the street, and there's a couple of others as well. So there's nothing wrong with it, I don't think.
Okay, that's yes.
I don't think this one's hanging, Martin. I think it's just projecting.
It's fixed. Yeah.
It's a fixed projecting sign. Yeah.
Okay, there are a number of those.
And fairly small. I mean, it's not a huge sign.
Okay. Everybody's content with that.
And at least they bothered to apply for planning permission.
Well, yes. It's nice to see that. Yes,
it is.
Unlike Nissa and unlike Hayes Travel.
Okay, we'll move on to And that's the last one that I have. 2003817 FUL TR Taylor and Son, 3 New Row, Alnwick. Retrospective, change of use from vehicle repair workshop and premises to supernumerary road use and addition of gate and formation of linked roof between buildings. Okay, yes, Martin.
Does everybody know where this is in town? Yeah.
Yes, Martin.
Okay, I'll have a
I
little
don't
drive
think I
down.
do, Peter.
What's on?
If you're in Morrison's car park and you look over the barrier at the end, just to the left of the flats, it's down in there.
Mhm.
Right next to Pottergate car park.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the bit that we're looking at is the small joining section between the two large buildings. So the flat roofed, the bit that you can see is just the front and the back, I guess. Okay, Martin.
Okay, people, here we go. Been down, had a look at it, and you can probably tell by the if you've had a look at the heritage statement, it shows you a photograph of the thing actually up and in place. So straight away that got a hot dog in my ear. So again, it's a retrospective planning application. Not anybody in this panel agrees with that sort of thing. So there you have it. To give you a little bit of background, if you're looking at that photograph that's on the screen there now, to the left, the first one is a hairdresser's. It's got a hairdresser's sign outside it. And it's got a roller shutter door on it. Honestly, you've got no idea. The silver door you can see on your left there is another part of the workshop. The piece where the door is, the piece is the retrospective bit. I'm not kidding. A 16-year-old kid could have put a better door on than that in the roof. So how far do you want us to go on with this one? With the heritage, with the heritage statement on the last page, it's a bit of a cut and paste job, to be honest with you. If you have a look at it, it says comfortable living for the people. People are going to live in it. So you can tell I've got the bee in my bonnet with this one. And when it gets to the well, what can you say? I've done a little bit of groundwork on this. So the summary, it says there, the proposed works limited extension. It says features of the building providing additional accommodation internally for a family living. Would you like to live in there? So apart from the blasé heritage statement, which is a really cut and paste from somewhere along the line, I've had a look at this in a bit more detail with retrospective planning. And we're going to go into government documents here. If you can revert to section 73A of the Town and Country Planning Act, that actually covers the section on retrospective planning, and section 70C covers respective planning. 70% of respective planning applications are refused. I've never heard of anyone ever refusing a retrospective planning in the time I've been a councillor. So this is when we're talking about neighbourhood plans and the chance to put things right, I would say this is probably the best time ever for this to come to light of how blasé a retrospective planning application is. The planning itself is a disgrace. The building that they put up is a disgrace. It's not worth a light. It's an asbestos garage with a hairdresser's at one end. So I'm going to say no more, but I could waffle on about this all day. I'll take your thoughts.
Jeff.
Yeah, as far as the cut and paste error, Martin, you took the words right out of my mouth. I had a look at this on the County Council website, and I noticed that as well. But it is just a cut and paste error. It talks about modern family living, and that took me a little bit by surprise. I know exactly where this is because I was down there quite a few times when they were building the Gen 2 buildings, which is just adjacent to it. They're just old garages, and somebody's decided to join them together and make it a little bit bigger. I've got no problem with that. I take your point about retrospective planning, but as we've been told on several occasions, the planners are required to view retrospective applications exactly the same as normal applications. So I don't think there's much we can do about it, but I do feel exactly the same way about it as you do. Personally, it is what it is. It's two old garages, and they've just joined them together. And well, nothing much more to say, really.
Linda?
Yeah, I'm a bit confused because when I read it, I thought it was already there, and I didn't think it had doors on it, the bit across the top. Obviously, it's been there and they put doors on it, and I thought this was an upgrade of what was already there. So I'm not sure if it is retrospective or not. I'll have to go back and read it again after your comments, but that's how I read it initially.
Yeah, I think it is retrospective. I think we've got a photograph that shows us basically that it's got to be retrospective.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up the matter of the cut and paste matter. Obviously, we can highlight that because that should never have, for a start, that should never have come through verification, I think we call it. Martin?
I think just to kind of conclude, the whole system of what they've done, would you go and get your hair cut in a place like that? The health and safety of it, the fire risk assessment, whatever you need to do, it's a right, just something as a responsible council, a town council, allowing something like that to take place. I don't think it stipulates what the building is going to be used for, but that's the point I'm trying to make. If it's one part of it already a hairdresser's, and you're putting a love shack in the middle to try and just make the thing more fluent inside, there must be issues here. Apart from the fact there's no energy performance certificate, there's no asbestos survey done. It's a dog's dinner, and I don't think it should be allowed. I should be objected on the health and safety part of the existing use, which is there if you're going past. I went yesterday in daylight, and it's got a little black sign. Hairdressers. Granted, there's a labourer on the next door. New owners. What are they doing? Cooking fish, cutting hairs, dog clipping, fixing cars. What's happening in that building? It's a real one for exploration, is to find out what actually happened in there. And I'm not trying to be unchristian what I'm saying. It's just there's principles and standards, and everything on that site at the minute, what we're referring to, is way above any standard that I would expect doing my job, and any councillor on this panel would expect. You need to go and have a look at it. That's my point, I think.
Linda?
Hairdressers has been there for at least 6 months, because I was down there at the beginning of when we were let out. So whenever that was, May.
What is unclear here, I think, although Martin may know the answer to this question, is whether these buildings are all owned by the same person, and whether this is just somebody building next door to somebody, or whether literally they're building onto their own building. Yes, Martin.
You'll go back, there's actually planning permission for 5 or 6 properties, 3 townhouses on the site. So the planning has been approved and passed for demolition of the buildings and recreation of property, but nobody's bought it up on that basis. So now they're just kind of filling up the properties with supplement plan application for doing bits here and bits there. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think it's just the principle of the standard of what it all is. If nobody's managing it, there's nobody putting a benchmark in as to what's there, then, you know, how far down the line do you go until there's a problem? My mantra is nothing's a problem until it's a problem. Now, when it comes knocking on the door, we haven't had this conversation tonight and making things and people aware of what's going on. If there's a fire or there's whatever, then they'll come back and say, well, it was in front of the town council. They didn't see anything. That's my point. Nothing's a problem until it's a problem. And then when it is a problem, everybody's starting looking for the bits of paper.
Yeah, I take your point, Martin, because the matter of the hairdressers, whether that was, I mean, we certainly haven't seen any kind of planning application, whether it's under this new change of use issue where you can change a use, I don't know, that's unclear. But that's something we can investigate to see what the planning enforcement think about the being a hairdresser there without actually, we haven't certainly seen a planning application whether that's an issue. Peter Brew. Yeah.
Yes, I'm in agreement with Martin what he's saying, but if he's proposing that we object to this, then I'll second it.
I'll put my hand up and say the reasons we're objecting of my objection is kind of a broad spectrum of Janet will scribbled down there: health and safety, non-planning application for the hairdressers, the already a planning application for housing, the appearance of the place. It just goes on, the list goes on.
Yes, Jeff?
Martin makes some good points, and I think on balance, I think we should object to it on health and safety grounds, and for the fact that there's been no application for the hairdressers. I think we should ask the enforcement officer to take a look at it.
Yeah, I think the issue where there's planning permission for housing on it is kind of irrelevant, but the other points are relevant. Yes, Janet.
The enforcement officer would only look at it if they were breaking their planning approval. We could ask enforcement. We could also ask public protection. If one of the team, the planning officer asks the public protection team what they think about all Martin's concerns about health and safety assessment, asbestos, all of that sort of stuff.
Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, just another point that there are some residential properties just across the road from these garages, and I think we should really be looking at what's being stored there, because I think I might be wrong, but I think I saw on the application that it was for storage. It looks like it's just wood in there from the photograph, but there could be other stuff that they're storing there. Perhaps we should include that and ask that to be investigated. I'd hate to think there'd be a fire, and I mean, they're literally about 10 yards away from these garages, those properties.
Okay, so I think we've got proposal to reject. I think we've got that seconded. Am I right? Am I keeping up? So does anybody have any other points before we take a vote? I mean, objecting to this application obviously is retrospective anyway, so it didn't really change anything in that sense, but it will throw a marker up to our county council colleagues that we have concerns on this site, which I think is probably fairly widespreadly felt. That perhaps things, particularly it was garages, and obviously changing from a garage to a hairdresser's is quite a major change, and there may well be substantially different rules for in terms of standards for a hairdresser. As you say, asbestos roofs, these are old buildings. There could be serious breaches there. We don't know. But to get somebody to look at it would be no bad thing. Because we could have it end up with a row of shops there, basically. The kind of rate we're progressing, it could happen. Okay, so I'll take a vote. So who is in favour of the proposal to object to this application? That's everybody. So have you captured everything you need to, Janet? Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So I think that's the end of our application. Unless anybody else, Janet's got any?
Anyway, yeah.
No.
I've got one more came in today, Martin, but it literally came in today, so we'll do it by email if that's okay.
That's fine, no problem. Okay, so neighbourhood plan review is the next item on the agenda. which is how it was intended, or was this the item that we talked to David English about, Peter?
Yeah, I think this agenda item was put on, Martin, to allow us to have a discussion following David's sort of chat earlier on. I thought I will email David tomorrow. Actually, I'll probably call him to thank him for giving his time. I thought it was useful for him to speak to us tonight. I think my slant on things at the moment is that given the local plan is imminent in terms of its adoption, given that there is a significant change in that there's a town boundary in it, given the changes to the use class order that we've seen come through recently, and given, this is my perception, but given that the world is likely to be a very different place following COVID, I think we're probably at the point where I think the planning committee could recommend to full council that we formally start that process off of refreshing the neighbourhood plan. That is my view at this point.
Do you have any comments? Yes, Julie.
Linda and I were involved in a meeting about the young people's housing need yesterday, and I think that we're very keen that there is a new housing needs assessment, and it's whether from the comments that David made, you know, whether that represents a substantial change and therefore kicks us into a new neighbourhood plan, or whether it sounds as though there are a different range of sources of funding for them that we weren't aware of. So it's just to sort of, you know, put that on the table and look for the committee's backing really for trying to pursue that, whether or not it kicks us into a new neighbourhood plan.
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I think obviously that's an important element, and that's come up a number of times in discussions. I think for me, that's the detail of actually the when we get into the renewing of the plan. I think the point right now is actually, do we need to press the button as an authority on the refreshing of our neighbourhood plan? And for the reasons I said earlier, I think we probably do, and then we'll start to thrash out through that process the likes of that housing needs stuff and all the other changes that we'll need to make to the plan.
Linda? You're muted, Linda. Linda, you're still muted.
You can't use the space bar when Peter's sharing his screen.
Am I still sharing screen?
I don't know.
No.
Oh, well, I wouldn't. I was pressing space bar. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And then I was going to ask for it to be on the next agenda to discuss how we would take it forward, because I think it provides us with an opportunity to do that, and maybe to look at other things that might need an update before we start refreshing the plan. I don't know what they are, but there might be other policies that we might want to have a look at.
Yes, Peter.
One of the recommendations that Peter Bigg has made was actually the start of the process is actually brainstorming, if you like, the areas that we probably want to refresh. But I think it's actually saying it's for us now as a town council to say, yes, we are going to start that process. There are still lots of variables out there with, you know, the government's white paper. I had quite a long chat with David prior to today's meeting, and he said, well, that can still be 2 years down the line, and you can't keep waiting for little things to change. I think we need to say, right, we need to refresh this plan, and then we'll start to look at the elements that we want to change, and we'll get a feel for what we need to do.
Okay. In terms of that then, are we looking, talk about a brainstorming session there, basically I think I agree. The question is whether that should be within the planning committee or it should be within a subcommittee of the full council. My tendency to think is that it really ought to be everybody on board really, and to be a committee of the full council rather than a planning committee. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, my view would be that it would be very sensible and appropriate for this committee to make a recommendation to full council that we started that process, and at least those who aren't here tonight get an opportunity to make their comments at full council. But at the same time, the planning committee is, you know, putting a flag in the ground and saying this is what we need to do.
Could I have a proposal, please, for that? Yes, Martin, seconded. Linda? Those in, well, anybody got any other comments? Those in favour? Okay. Thank you very much. So we'll take that to full council.
I'm obviously thoroughly disappointed with that decision because this is a whole load of work coming on the horizon for the next 12 months. But there you go.
Yeah, it's potentially a huge piece of work. Obviously, the bringing the plan up in the first place was a massive piece of work. It won't be as big as that, but it's going to be substantial amount of work and take probably quite a long time as well. If the first piece of work is only to go by, but it has been hugely valuable to us in Emmet, and it fills in that granular detail of where the local plan just doesn't go. We need to keep it as sharp as possible, basically, because it is allowing our community to decide where they want to go, and we need to be on top of that while we're able to do it through neighbourhood planning. Okay, so getting back down to the granular detail, Windy Edge development ongoing issues.
Yeah, this will be very brief. I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear. The plan was that I would meet with Liz O'Brien from Planning Enforcement. Due to COVID, that's not been possible. I have got now a Zoom meeting with her planned for 11 o'clock on Wednesday. So, Linda, if you're available for that, or your colleagues, that's in the diary as of this afternoon.
Wednesday, okay. It's quite timely because with all this weather, this wet weather we've had, and we've already raised the issue about the footpath, the bank sliding again. And there was some real concern from my neighbours about the safety of the people in the houses, but there was really, it's up to them, and it looks like they've well, Lee was there with the owner of that particular house, but there are still, it's getting worse because of the weather as well.
Okay, Linda, thank you. Yeah, that certainly sounds like something that needs to be picked up. I mean, obviously the footpath issues generally, because the state of footpaths is horrendous. It was last time I saw them.
You should see it now, Martin. It's even worse.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's been a wet winter, and obviously people, as Peter was pointing out the other day, people are using the footpaths more and more, and they're getting muddier and muddier. I mean, to my view, really, a housing developer like that, with the resources that they've got, when they're diverting a footpath in that way, ought to be putting hard footpaths down with hardcore or something, because they've taken out a road, Peter's Mill Lane, which was walked on, and they've left it mud, basically, and it hasn't had a chance for the grass to grow or whatever. It has no real hope. So yes, if we could move towards that position of putting pressure on them, because it's going to be a building site for a long time, to do something better. Yes, Amy.
They've actually done the new footpath, which actually runs across the back of my house and then parallel to the A1. They've done nothing on that. There's surface water lying on the stretch of the barrier, what's it called? The ransom strip or whatever it's called. The surface water that's sitting on there about a couple of inches deep, which I've never seen before because it used to drain away. And then going down that footpath, it's on a bank like this, and then there's only a very narrow bit to walk along, and that's just, it's never, well, that's why they opened up the other temporary footpath again, because it was so bad. So the footpath, the long-term issue of the footpath's a real
yeah, I don't know if there's any possibility, Peter, you could get a footpath officer along to the meeting that we have with the enforcement.
Good idea.
I don't know whether it's possible, but to literally find out whether we do have any, or the county council has any power to ask for a better standard of footpath, rather than just a gap that could be a swamp or in the First World War, to be quite honest. Whether they actually can require a footpath to go into a certain standard.
I would imagine that they do, yes. I think it's important, Linda, that you're around with something that Liz can take away with that to actually probably pinpoint to the right officers. So I think at the moment, I think if we speak to Liz, give us something to actually take back and share with appropriate people, because it's going to be more than just a footpath officer. I would expect there's going to be all sorts of issues that come out of it. I think that's probably the right way to go. Although I can ask Liz if there's somebody who's appropriate, but you know, getting lots of officers together at the same time is sometimes difficult. And I'm more keen that we have the meeting with Liz, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay, thank you, Peter. The other side of this was what we discussed at the Sustainable Travel Group, which was the speeding on Almath Road. We basically think that there was a condition on the application to put in a gate, effectively, not actually a gate, but a sort of perceptive narrowing of the road to try and slow the traffic down. I don't know whether we're going to dig any of that out, Janet, but obviously it hasn't gone in yet, and we've still got an issue. And the question here was whether we need to be pushing harder to get either that implemented or really whether that's going to be enough to actually solve the issue with regard to speeding. And I believe that the issue that is of most concern to residents is people speeding up on the way out of Almath. Not coming in into the 30 minutes at 60 or whatever, but actually going out and traveling at 15, 60 before they get out of the town.
I think we definitely raise that because it's a real concern, and that was my main objection to the whole development. Highways said there's no issue. The speed that was measured, I think I've said this before, by the builders with the metro counts, they actually laid the metro count more or less at the Royal Oak Gardens entrance, you know, where there's a little pathway into Royal Oak Gardens. That was where the metro count was. So it's a long way from the junction. And they've had time to speed up, as I say, the speed up as they come towards the bend and the speed up there. But it's definitely something that I would be raising with the enforcement officer. Yeah. And the design for the gateway, I mean, when they say a gate, all they need to do is put, all they may do is just put a white fence at some point along that stretch of road. I think it'll be a bit impractical because of the nature of the footpath, so they may not be able to do that. But there's been no design yet. We've no idea what the thoughts are about what that's going to look like.
Okay, so what's kind of going through my mind is that those obviously the speed strips were put in before the development was even at the planning stage, I guess, of the development. And what would obviously be the next step, if there were concerns there, would be to get speed checks done, probably in two locations, somewhere in the vicinity of where the entrance to the Peters Mill Lane it used to be, and possibly further down towards the marker. I don't know. I guess we can put a request in for that, Peter. Whether that will be implemented or not, I don't know. But I guess we can put.
Yeah, I think we probably can. I think there is a danger of disseminating all of these issues. I think the strength is actually probably how worried the council is about this development in its entirety. And I think if we can keep it together, I think we've got more chance of getting things done. So I would recommend that we include this in the discussion with Liz O'Brien next week, but also we take that whole bundle probably to the forum as well, to make sure it's on the agenda at a high level in terms of officer ranking, if you like. So that's how I would approach that initially and see what comes back.
Yes, Martin?
Just to give you a bit of an alternative in the discussions along the way, like the speed warning light on the entrance from Manick Moor to Chapel Lands. I don't know what they cost, but I would have thought they would have been a more appropriate reminder along like the Ravensmead straight before they go down the hill, along there somewhere, and on the other way coming in. I followed a police car from Almouth tonight, and he was still doing 40 when he passed the entrance to Peter's Mill. So you're never going to win. You've got to put something in to remind people on visitors, strangers, and that, I think, once people see that light flash, it gives them a reminder to check their speed, and that's the cheapest option. I would have said, never mind trying with these gateways and barriers and stepped passing places. It never happened. That's just my view.
Yeah, the thing, I mean, the speed camera, as it were, on Top by Chapel Lands there is actually quite effective when you're walking along that road and watch what happens. But the issue with that is that, as we understand it, is that the £5,000 a pop, and then the town council is responsible for maintenance of those cameras. That one was put in from Councillor Castle's allocation a couple of years ago. Basically, the county council won't fund them. Is what we were told at that time, certainly. So that's where we are with that. I mean, that's certainly an option. The other option I'm thinking about, Martin, potentially, is that you would actually put a chicane in, and that would actually physically slow the traffic down. Whether it's viable on that road, I don't know. It would certainly work, but obviously it would have implications on holding traffic up, but it would certainly work. But there may be intermediate physical things that could be done. Linda?
Just to say that Councillor Castle has suggested one of those speed camera warnings and has offered to fund it, I recall, in the past. But we'll see what this design's going to look like. Okay,
yep. Peter?
I agree with Martin Harrington on the speed sensors. I quite often travel to see houses and I go through Chat Hill Village, and that one's brilliant because you approach that at 45, 50 mile an hour and you think, ooh, stand on the brakes here. And honestly, it works every time because you've got to slow right down to get the green light. And I think they're the most effective thing. Most villages in Scotland have them in every single village. There's no question about how much you spend on it. Put it in. Do you know what I mean? I appreciate that this committee doesn't have a budget, but maybe we'll find it from somewhere else. Peter might be able to help on that one and just say, look, you know, let's put this to full council that we pay for one to do it. You know, £5,000. What's £5,000 in a bigger scheme of things? If somebody's going to be safer through it, we could ask cousins and say, well, look, you know, the council's going to put one of these in, but are you prepared to contribute? I mean, if you don't go and ask them, you're never going to get anything. You know, we seem to be their worst enemy at the minute. The town council seem to be a bit of a thorn in their side. So maybe they may come good and say, actually, yeah, that's a great idea. Have a word with Mr. Cousins himself. You know, he's the man to speak to.
The matter was raised at the planning stage, and they were asked repeatedly whether they would put them in, and they refused to do so. It isn't as if the matter hasn't been raised. If the town council was going to move towards spending £10,000, what it would be, because you'd have to do it in both directions, I think, if we were going to do it at that location. That's a matter for other committees, I guess. But we can progress that if that was going to be a serious proposal. I mean, there may be other entrances to the town which may also need looking at as well, because we just talked about one entrance. Jeff Watson.
Yeah, as Linda says, I think I do recall Gordon offering to pay for it. So can I suggest that we ask Gordon if he still has some money and if he could pay for it, and if he buys one, perhaps the town council could be persuaded to buy the other one. I think it is a speeding spot and we need to address it.
There is another question, which is, well, what happens to the other councillors' allocation we don't have at the moment? The councillor that we ought to have but don't have, because there should be an allocation there as well, which is made to Manny Calmouth and Lesbury area. So there may be a possibility there, Jeff, and it would certainly be worth asking the question. We're not going to get anything for not asking it. Okay, we'll let it go to the meeting with Liz in the first instance, and then we'll. Yes, Peter.
And I propose that we put it on the next full council meeting to be discussed about having a light up sign on the thing, and that way we can talk to Gordon at that meeting and see where we go from there. Otherwise, we'll just go round and round in circles like every other time. If we don't put it on the agenda, you cannot discuss it. We in this committee, we don't have a budget, so we cannot make any financial decisions. So go to full council, ask full council, see what they say.
Have we got a seconder for the proposal?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Cheers.
Who's in favour of that? Okay, thank you, Peter.
Wow.
Is there anything else on Windy Edge? Are we all done on that for now? I'm sure we'll be coming back to it. Okay, TPO Alaburn House. I just put this on for an update really from Janet.
Yeah, I spoke to Esther today, planning officer, because we wanted to know when they'd be made permanent as opposed to a sort of, you know, the sort of in transit TPOs. 2 of the TPOs are now permanent. She's done that this week. She can do that, so that they're just permanent. The 3rd TPO had some comments come back from local residents. They weren't anti, they wanted a few more trees added to the TPO. So Esther's happy to do that. So she will revoke the existing order and remake the new order on the same day. That way there's no break in the protection of the trees covered by that TPO. Once that's made, it will then come out again for a consultation period. She doesn't expect any further comments, and at the end of that point, that will also be permanent. But the 2 that are permanent at the moment are the one at the lodge, and on the right-hand side as you go into Alaburn Lee, and all the trees between Alaburn House and the Annick Garden car park. So they're both now permanent.
Good, that's progress, I think. Janet, absolutely. So in terms of when, just to fill everybody in terms of when we talk about 3 different sections there, does that cover, are they all the trees that we were talking about?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's good news, absolutely. Peter?
Yeah, does that TPO include that Lealandy tree next to the lodge? Because really it doesn't. Because that really could do with coming down. Because
No, it covered the only one covered at the lodge is the big beech tree.
All right, okay.
At the entrance, that's listed as a single tree.
Yes.
TPO'd. That's the only one on that bit. Yeah.
Right. So that Lealandy that you come to next isn't.
No, I don't think that's included. No.
Right. Because I would hate somebody to put a TPO on that, because eventually that's going to.
No, Barry Wilson would. No, Barry and Esther wouldn't have done that. No.
Real thanks.
No.
Okay, thank you, Janet, for that update. That's good news. That's the TPO process seems to be speeding up somewhat from the sort of 5-year or 10-year or whatever it was taking us. That's good news. Good news. Right. Annex Cemetery entrance safety issues. Do we have anything?
Yeah, we haven't got a solution for you yet, Martin, but we have found the right people to speak to. Janet will be able to give you slightly more info on that.
Yeah, we've kind of gone about it pincer movement. So Peter's gone Richard Mackenzie route. We're hoping for him to come back. And I've gone the ladies who do admin in the office, which was the way of finding out who to speak to. So I spoke to Nigel Brennan today, and he gave me the traffic management officer's contact. It's Kevin Brown who does the traffic management. I've left him a message, and I've also sent him an email to explain the issues that we were having. And I've asked if he could come and make a site visit for us and give us some advice onto what we could do. I've also had a look at some possible signage that we could put up. And the best one is probably a red triangle, which is a kind of a warning symbol with an exclamation mark in, with the message underneath. That they normally say hidden dip, but I think for ours we could say slow vehicles turning, and that might, because you're going to have the issue with Premier Inn as well, aren't you? But I've asked Kevin to come out. I think that's the best thing. He's used to doing stuff like that. So as soon as I've got a date from him, if anybody wants to join us, then we can arrange that.
Thank you, Janet. That's really helpful, because obviously this is a bit of a serious issue. John.
Yes, it's really taking on Martin Harrington's point from last time. On Tuesday, I was coming along South Road from the south, and I was going to turn into the Willowburn Estate. And I was just about to turn, and a low-profile sports car came screaming over the brow of the hill. You just couldn't see it. Well, fortunately, I hadn't crept across the road, but I think he's got brown pants anyway. But I mean, we were talking about speeding. Well, I mean, he probably was only doing about 45 to 50, but of course, with that brow, it's surprising how hidden that can be. So maybe when we're talking about signing and that sort of thing, that needs to be taken into account, especially as we've said, with the prospective hotel. Okay, just
okay, thank you, John. Linda?
Yeah, just to support John and say that I observed something similar just not long after the last meeting when I was going along there.
Okay, if we can flag these up with the officer, Janet, that would be good. Peter?
Just while we're on that same subject, I just wondered if there's some sort of traffic review along South Road. I know it's the main route into Alnwick, and the junction at Aldi's quite bad as well. You're on a brow of a hill there, and some people sit there for ages waiting to get out. And it's,
true.
I mean, I think we highlighted that when the whole thing was built, but it just came on deaf ears. Peter, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Peter. I think when we actually, Janet and I nail a couple of people down, that's something that we'll probably try and push them towards.
Yes,
Yeah.
Martin?
Just on Berwick, if you go through High Street in Berwick heading like north, you get under the bridge and there's a car park on your right, there's a big box junction. They use box junctions in Berwick a lot. But the box junction at the cemetery entrance would be an ideal opportunity because it would allow people to come out and get away, slow down up the hill, go another way, allow people out and where Peter's referring to at the junction for Aldi and whatever. Just ideas, what other people do, and it allows the things to progress. But not a lot of people know how to use a box junction, and I'll leave it at that.
Hope they've got more yellow paint at NCC than they've got white paint, because there's boxes next to the War Memorial Junction still haven't been repainted.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, those are points we can raise with the officer when he comes out, and see if we can get a better look at that area of South Road. Yeah. Okay, do we have any other urgent business? Yes, Peter.
Peter Broom's got a one. Two, really.
Surprise.
Start with the footpaths. I brought this up at full council when Gordon was talking. I don't know whether it's our job or not, but we're going to be talking to a public footpath executive from the county council about the Windy Edge development. Can we also ask them what finances are available and what sort of stuff could be used to repair the current footpaths that everybody around Alnwick's using right now? I mean, seriously, I was out at the weekend again, and I know the weather's bad, but honestly, some of these footpaths will never recover. You're going to have 3 months of drought to get them to recover. And I just feel that certainly the ones that Northumberland Estates cover, which are their sort of designated ones, I don't know, can we liaise with different people, Peter, or, you know?
I think probably most of the paths you're talking about, Peter, are going to be Northumberland Estates trails, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to have. I've got to just. Hopefully, in the next 2 weeks, I'll be speaking to Colin Barnes about the Greenway project that we'd like to initiate.
Yeah.
It's kind of linked, so I'll bring it up when I have that meeting with him. I'm not hopeful that they'll be able to do anything significant, but I will bring it up.
Even if they could supply materials, you may get some 1 or 2 volunteers, certainly at the minute, mental health.
Well, the Greenway project is obviously sort of based all around volunteers, so it's probably the right time to bring that up. I think an independent call about it probably wouldn't go very far, but if I'm talking about it on the back of the Greenway stuff, then it might.
Okay, and can we just suggest it to the, because obviously public footpaths are the responsibility of the county council to make sure that they are usable, I believe. I'm not sure whether that's true or not.
Yeah, I think Peter, well, as I understand it, it's the landowner's responsibility. Obviously, the county council will look at that, but it will be useful to know a bit more about that in terms of who's responsible legally, etc., etc. To be a bit more armed in terms of having conversations with landowners to see what actually their responsibilities are.
Just
getting the count. I mean, I agree with you in terms of the state of the footpaths, but it's the realistic solution, isn't it, that we can get to
I mean, you know, basic materials like wood shavings and stuff like that can actually sponge up moisture very well. And actually, you know, I've seen other footpaths in different parts of the country that have been repaired like that, rather than using hogging or whatever. You know, on grass, you don't want to be doing that. But that's pretty much that point. The second point I've got is my concern.
Before you finish, Peter, just
Sorry.
to say, a lot of the footpaths are permissive, which means that the landowner can rescind access.
Right.
So just to point that out on, especially the Northumberland Estates permissive paths.
Right. Okay. The second point that I have is the concern about the areas in the town that are now resident parking. Now, I don't know whether they ever review them, but I think the one in just across the road from me, I took photographs on New Year's Day. There was 2 cars, and bearing in mind we're in lockdown, there was 2 cars parked in that street on New Year's Day. And I also took a photograph of Lisburn Street, which I believe some of the residents are trying to get it there as well, permit parking. And there was nobody on the street was empty. And I'm thinking, why are we going more and more for that and not allowing any other kind of public parking there at all? Whereas the one at the War Memorial is an A6, and you're allowed to park there for 3 hours, Monday to Friday, or that's when the restrictions are. And I'm thinking, well, why are we not doing that in other parts of the town? Why are we just saying, oh, residents only, nobody else can park there? And I just feel when we have parking issues in the town, we should maybe look at these issues in a little bit more detail, or review them after a certain period of time. Thank you.
Okay, Peter. I mean, this is something that you had raised at an early point, and there was a couple of meetings I think you missed because we did discuss it a couple of times. I think Linda has a point.
Yeah, Peter Haley and I raised this with Paul Jones at another meeting that we were having, and he said that they would only review residents' parking if residents came to them and asked them to review it. It has to come from the residents, and he also said there was no plan and he would not be undertaking a review of all residents' parking in the town. I don't know if you want to add. Oh, Peter's got it.
Yeah, I was just. I mean, that. Yeah, you said really what I was going to say. And I think what I took from Paul Jones that it would be probably quite difficult unless the residents wanted to go back on the agreements that they had for it to happen. So I think that side of it's difficult. I think where we can make a difference is actually when new applications do come up, we make sure that we don't fall into the same trap again, and we make sure that the right resident parking schemes go in for the town and the residents.
I just find that, I mean, a good example of Lisburn Street is, Peter, you'll know further along Prudhoe Street, it's a nightmare getting parked sometimes. But the problem is you have all the streets that branch off. Percy Terrace, where Sue Patience lives. I mean, it's an absolute nightmare up there. And I mean, those people are having to come down. I mean, seriously, you should be allowed to park your car somewhere, but you didn't want to park it miles from your house. But if you go around the corner into Lisburn Street, you'll find that there's quite a few of those cars that are parked there actually are from Percy Street and Percy Terrace. And it's like, where do you actually stop? Because you push the problem elsewhere. And I think just reviewing some of the other ones, would be a good way forward. I mean, I don't know how many permits they sold in Monkhouse Terrace, I've asked the people that live there, and at the moment, it only seems that there's about 5 permits being issued. I mean, that cost absolute thousands to put all those signs and that up, and they're only getting £125 a year in.
Peter?
The other thing that strikes me in relation to the parking, and I have raised this at the forum already, is that when we get the new car park at the Dusters High School, 190 spaces or whatever, that should probably have an impact on the other car parking arrangements that we have. And I think we should, when that new car park opens, prior to that, we should have a review of all the parking in the town, because having a new 190 space car park will have an impact on the other car parks as well, and potentially the streets that surround the town centre.
I mean, I do think genuinely you have a point here, Peter, but the mechanism for actually addressing the point, as we've tried to take it to County Council, it's difficult, because unless the actual residents want to review the matter, then there doesn't seem to be any mechanism, which doesn't seem right, because obviously things change over time. So it is definitely a difficult point. I mean, something maybe we need to bring up again with Councillor Feston and see if we can make any progression. Really.
Just on the back burner of that one, there's also there's some disabled bays. There's 2 outside the current or what was the library, that should maybe now be removed and resident parking put onto those spots, because they were solely purposely put there for the benefit of the library. And also the Rafa Club, I believe that's never going to reopen as a club again. And there's one disabled spot that's just been put back there again. And it's like it's taken up a space because there's nobody up that street that's disabled. And it's like,
Yeah, well, there must surely be a way to review that kind of thing. I would have thought.
Yeah.
That must be there. I don't know whether we can investigate that, Janet, to see how those would be reviewed.
Yeah, please do if you can. It's just
Janet.
Sorry, I was just going to give Councillor Broom 13. Councillor Broom, Monkhouse Terrace.
13.
Car parking permits 13.
Wow.
They were all bigger than we thought. I got all the data, and they were much bigger than we thought.
Right.
But you are allowed to have 2 per house, so it could be that some of them have got 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Janet, you might be able to send Peter that data so you can have a look at it and see.
Okay.
Please do. That would be good. Thanks.
Yes, Jeff.
Just a quick point, Jan. Taking Peter's point, the only way I could see to get round this was, if we want to go down that route, would be to canvass the residents in the scheme and say, and ask them if they are happy with the current scheme, or would they be prepared to change it to something else. See what they say. But that would obviously take some work.
I think that's essentially where we are, Jeff, with that. But anyway, if Janet could pass the data on to Peter, and sorry, Peter, because he did miss some meetings where we did discuss this.
All right, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, you're okay. But I mean, I think you're absolutely right. But whether we have any mechanism for improving matters, that's tricky. But
it's just before we go forwards into even more resident park, and that's what I'm saying, is that we'll look at the bigger picture much in more detail, and the impact of approaching streets as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because resident parking is just about the people on the bigger street that sign up to it. And,
John, if you've got a problem, you can switch your computer off. You don't have to mumble on just because I'm having a discussion.
No,
well, that's fine. Just put yourself on mute. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any other urgent business?
There's one on the agenda, Peter and Martin. Sorry, everybody. I will be really quick with this if I could.
Go on.
Sorry, I've got to go. I've got to
thank
go.
you, Linda.
I do apologise. Sorry.
Okay, I'll be really quick with this, everyone. You're about to get. Bear with me. I'm just going to get it up for my benefit on my screen. Janet will send round a draft copy of the private sector housing strategy, which has been issued by Northumberland County Council. I don't know if you've got it already, but if you haven't, Janet will send it round. It's only got a 3-week consultation period on it, so we've decided that we'll just take in your views and get them. We'll go through Martin effectively via email. It's not a very long document, it's only 15 pages. it's a strategy document. I guess the question is, if you need to ask yourselves, is have they got their priorities right? So there are 4 priorities in the document. One's about increasing access to affordable housing and bringing empty homes into use. So Julia, this is the sort of thing that you might be interested in with your advisory group, etc. It's got the second priority is around improving conditions and safeties and energy efficiency and that sort of stuff. They've also, the third one is around advice and support and actually triggering action when homeowners or tenants are at risk. And then the final priority they've got in there is around sustainability in terms of tenancy lengths. So that's a very, very brief summary of what they think the priority should be. If you have a look at it, and if you've got any comments, send them through to Martin, and Martin and I will have a chat about it and put a response in on behalf of.
Do we have a date?
Yeah, it's the 14th. Is it the 14th? Yeah.
14th of Feb.
Yeah. A reason for me to remember the 14th of February.
Okay, so
my wife's not watching this.
If we could have comments back to me by what, say the 7th of February, and then we have time to look at them, and if people have comments for them, we can collate them and put them in. Okay. Don't know whether I want to ask for any other urgent business. I think they're probably not. I think everybody's.
No, I'm starving.
Yeah, me too. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. That was quite a long meeting, but I think it was quite useful in terms of the discussion with David English, and I think we've made some progress there. Okay, thank you very much, and good night.
See you later.